So I'm not a huge fan of PSA's decision here. I think that this is dangerous, and I hate being like, oh, it's so dangerous that they're doing this, but it's like I don't know what this is one of the examples that I said. I don't know what sometimes I don't know what PSA is doing. I don't know why they would decide to start grading these cards again. I think the legend has it about the star rookies is that someone got their hands on one of the printing plates, so there's so many counterfeits. I am also nervous that like there's going to be a ton of, you know, I'd be nervous if I had one of those old graded cards because they stopped grading pretty soon after people started submitting all these counterfeits. Because like I said, I think it's a little bit different than the legend of like the Ken Griffey Jr. card, because the Ken Griffey Jr. rookie, apparently the legend has it that they apparently the legend was from that one that that Upper Deck just printed a ton of them. Like not even it wasn't even someone taking the plate. It was literally just Upper Deck taking a bunch. So I don't know. I mean, I think it, you know, I know Rob G, when I interviewed him, he said one of his favorite cards that he bought, he was the person that bought the $5.2 million the Mickey Mantle, the 1952 PSA 9 that was sold for $5.2 million at the beginning of last year. When I interviewed him, he said one of his favorite cards was a PSA 8 star rookie. First of all, because PSA hadn't graded them. So it's like it's impossible to find. And he actually kind of shared an interesting story on the show, is that like when he asked PSA to put it in a regrader, they weren't even doing that. Like they weren't even putting these cards, they weren't even trying to regrade the cards themselves. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I guess I don't know. They have to have some sort of system at this point to figure out which ones are fake and which ones are real. I don't know what it is. Like PSA, like I said, they have so much data. They have so much of the kind of the info that's going to give them hopefully the correct answer for some of these if people are submitting counterfeit ones, which also maybe they're looking at and saying, how many of these cards even could there still be? Like that's maybe one thing that they're looking at and saying, like, if they only, which they probably got an influx since they said that they were going to start grading these cards. So so I buried the lead a little bit. Golden has a PSA 9. The only PSA 9 in existence is on sale at Golden. And it's in a new slab, which means it either was just graded or it was put into a new, well, no, I must have just been graded because there wasn't a PSA 9 before. So it was just graded. I guess they must have somebody that's able to look at them and make sure that they're not grading the counterfeit versions. The thing with this star rookie compared to the 1986 Fleer, which 86, 87, 85, 86, the Fleer card, that was the first licensed product with Michael Jordan. This wasn't a licensed product, which is one of the reasons I think why PSA wasn't grading it. And then I think the other was obviously the counterfeiting. But because these cards didn't come in like regular packs, they came in like the team packs that they sell at like Targets and Walmarts. Like you can get your like football or basketball teams cards. I think they're Donruss, I'm pretty sure. So it's basically, I think it was that. And like I said, the legend has it that somebody took apparently one of the printing plates and counterfeited a bunch of them. I think that they must know, there must either be, I don't know, somebody that worked at Star or somebody that, I don't know how they're going to be able to tell the difference, because that's the reason why they stopped, because so many of them were being submitted. So I guess they must have a good source or a good amount of people that can look and tell the difference between the two. It could even be that maybe people were submitting the cards. No, people wouldn't submit them because he can't submit them. I don't know. I don't know why they decided to just make this shift, because I think this also affects that Fleer Jordan market, in my opinion. I think it may not have a huge effect, but it also is going to affect the star. I think both cards are going to be affected. I think the star, it's only going to help. It's only going to help because you're going to have more examples being sold. And also it legitimizes that card in general. Like, so if somebody has it graded, like, I don't know, if I'm Rob G, maybe I'm asking and saying, can you look at this and tell me if it's real or not? Like, and then get it regraded if they need to. I don't know if he would actually do that, because like you run the risk that you spent however much he spent on the card and that it's a fake. So I don't know, but like, the Fleer market, I still think that's one of the best cards, the Jordan card in the hobby in general. I think that it was part of this sort of basketball market where, we saw such a huge increase in such a short amount of time that there was, like I said, hindsight's 2020. It was inevitable that we were going to see maybe a little bit of a correction there. But at the same time, the card, the star card is going to, I think that it's gonna positively, the fact that PSA, I don't know if Beckett's gonna start doing it, but since PSA has, I think it's gonna positively affect those cards. It may in the short term negatively affect the Fleer Jordan, but like I said, I think long term the Fleer Jordan is going to be very similar to the 1952 Mantle eventually. Obviously, I think there's 140 PSA 10s where with the Mantle there's only 3 PSA 10s, but still, I think at this point, I can't see the total PSA 10s of the Fleer jumping above 150. Like, I can't imagine, or maybe I'll say 160. I can't imagine that there's 20 more PSA 10s available, that 20 more PSA 10s that could be graded over the lifespan of, well, I guess there isn't really a deadline on a lifespan, but of this card. But like, I think, you every a couple of years, you see more PSA 10s get graded. I also think, to sort of similar to the 2019 Prism market, you saw the increase happen and then everybody wanted to sell and then the volume goes up and then the volume affects the price and people probably bought those cards. They're probably okay selling the card for significantly less than what they could get it for, significantly less than what they could have got it for in the past, because a lot of people probably were buying those PSA 10s at like 20 to 40,000. So like if they're going to sell, now granted, I think the people who are buying at 250 to 500,000 it's definitely going to be a different crowd than the people who were buying at 20,000 to 40,000. So like those people that were buying, the people that are buying at 250 to 500, let's just say, they're probably not going to be as eager to jump in and sell the card at either a loss or even a little bit of a gain, where the people who are buying them at 20 to 40, they're not going to ever, I don't think that card will never get to that point. And this could, if you follow crypto people at all, like this is what crypto people were saying forever, like Bitcoin will never drop below X amount. But I just think that with how many of those cards there are and with the significance of the card, I just can't see the card dropping too significantly down to a point where it's at a range that it was pre 2019, 2020, if that makes sense. But I think it's going to just take a lot longer for those cards to increase. I think one of my takes in the past has been that I thought that these cards were going to get to $1 million. I am not 100% sure about that anymore. I think that there's a chance that they could, but I think it's going to take a lot more. It's going to take a lot longer than I was expecting. Like in 2020, when these cards were selling, like I think one of them sold for $720,000, which that also had I think it's called the Validator. I think it was sold by PWCC and had like a PWCC A grade. So it was like the top 10% of the cards were get this grade or whatever. So it was in much better. It was a 10, but it was in a better condition than some of the other 10s. So that's why that card sold for so much. I don't know if that's necessarily even a good comp to use. I think that the people who like cards use that as a comp, and the people who don't like cards also use that as a comp. But there's a middle ground there where it's if someone's saying that it sold for $750,000 or $720 or whatever the total price was, and they don't mention that it was like it had that secondary level of grading, it's a little disingenuous in my opinion, because that second level of grading is what really kind of shot that card up. And if it's hypothetically, if it's the best PSA 10 that's been graded, then yeah, maybe it should be in that higher range. I also think that PSA needs to start figuring out how to publicize when a card was graded. So like, I think the first Jordan PSA 10, like whatever the serial number of the first Jordan PSA 10 card is, that's way more valuable than the 120th PSA 10 now is graded. I think that whatever I think it's kind of like serial numbering. Like the 23rd the 23rd PSA 10 probably should be in that same range with the first PSA 10. I've said this a while, and it's kind of something that I think with NFTs in general, like it's one thing that I think sports cards may need to try and implement a little bit more is the authenticating and certification of these cards, but also being able to identify which ones are better than the others, because it's not every PSA card is not every PSA 10 is not created equal. PSA has said that they have like a range of what, the centering. So it's like, I think it's like 60-40 sometimes PSA, because I had two Lucas, but if you go to eBay and you look at any of the PSA 10s that are selling, they're all going to look different. So it's like if you have the PSA 10 that was this Jordan card that sells for $720,000, but you're not saying that it was because it was graded sort of again almost, then that's a little disingenuous in my opinion. And it's maybe something that for clickbait I've done in the past for sure, but it's like it needs to be part of the story, whether you're highlighting in a positive way or if you're highlighting that card in a negative way. So just basically in general, I think that this star card that PSA has now decided that they're going to be grading, it's almost like PSA is shifting the landscape of the market. I don't know. It's an interesting decision. We'll see how it pans out. I don't love it. I sort of I guess I understand that there are going to be real and authentic versions of this card that should be able to get graded. And it's not, I guess it's maybe not even PSA's responsibility to solidify or help markets in a way. So like they have to be unbiased in the way that they're grading these cards and how it's going to affect the market. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I wish almost that PSA would come out and also say how many of these cards are being submitted are not authentic as well. I think that would be an interesting statistic. I don't know if they'll ever do that. But that's kind of my thoughts on PSA deciding that grading the star card and how it's sort of going to affect the Jordan Fleer card as well.